So we're going to install a V-Strom rear wheel. First we want to make sure that the spacer is still in the rear sprocket carrier. Very important. Then we're going to drop the sprocket back into the push drive, and I'm going to add a fingerful of marine grease to this seal. Marine grease will help the spacer seal out water and dirt and debris from getting inside your wheel. We insert the spacer, we're going to lift up the wheel, and now we're going to do the other side. Just a small dab of marine grease, we're going to wipe it around in the seal, and then we're going to take our spacer and we're going to stick it back inside the seal. Now we're ready to install the wheel with the brand new tire back on the motorcycle. Now we want to clean off the rear axle and put a light coat of grease on the rear axle. Again, I use marine grease. You can use whatever grease you like. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. All we're doing is trying to protect the axle. It's not really giving it any lubrication qualities. It just makes the axle easier to remove next time we have to do the wheels. So then we set up the wheel, and we got to drop the caliper. The caliper is going to drop on the wheel, and then it needs to drop over there's a little ridge on the swing arm, on the inner swing arm, that the caliper mounts to, that keeps the caliper from wiggling around when you grab a handful of brake. On this bike it's a little bit more difficult than it really should be, but it'll go. And you can also see that I removed the ABS brake sensor. On the video where I took off, I left it on, but it's so much easier to remove that ABS sensor before you start this project, so you don't risk damaging it. So we just put the chain on. Now we need to line up the axle with the wheel, and the chain adjuster just keeps wanting to slide out of this. This is a pretty new bike. This is the first tire change on it. I think the bike only had about 3,000 miles on it at this point. So everything's new and falling out, and once this bike gets a few more miles on it and starts getting dirt and debris up inside all the moving parts, that chain adjuster won't move so freely and fall out of this swing arm. That's the nice thing about riding a motorcycle, is you get dirt, debris, and crud in more places on a motorcycle than you'd ever imagine. So it's going through. We're lining it up with the brake caliper now. The axle's through the rear wheel. We're ready to put on the axle nut. We're going to tighten down this axle nut almost to where it needs to be, and then we'll finish it off with the torque wrench. If you need torque specifications for your V-Strom, this should be in your owner's manual. I don't typically give out torque specs because this year's model might be a little bit different from last year's model. So it's best if I don't share torque specs with you. This way you're not mad at me for giving you the wrong information. And now we're putting the ABS sensor back in. And we're going to torque this one down as well. Again, torque specs are in your owner's manual. So once we have that completed, let's go ahead and pump up the brakes. The last thing you want is your friend to jump on the bike and not have any brakes.